Hey everyone, Pure here, and I would like to quickly showcase a strategy that I've been using in order to farm a lot of XP and loot at the same time, to be honest. My main focus is mostly on XP, but it also does work for loot. Something to note about this strat is that it's actually um, only doable in solo, and to be honest, you don't really need it in groups because in groups we all know the strat where you just basically quit and reform a party and essentially does the same thing. Um, so yeah, so for this strat, the first step that you need to do is, well, first of all, you need to be in either world tier 3 or 4. It won't work before that, so that's really like an endgame focus kind of strat. And the whole purpose of this is you need access to nightmare dungeons, and I will quickly explain why. Let me just walk in here first. So I just triggered a nightmare dungeon. It's a fresh one. You'll see when I walk in there. But essentially, you only want to do the first half of it. And the reason for this is because when you do the first half of it, for some reason, if you leave that dungeon and then go do any other dungeon, um, you're gonna trigger a weird state where every time you're gonna leave that other dungeon, it's gonna reset that dungeon instantly. So just for the showcase here, I'll try to do this part as fast as I can. Simply because once you see like the setup in effect, you'll quickly notice what I mean by the fact that it auto resets. So like I said a bit earlier, you just want to do the first half of this. That's the nightmare dungeon. It can be any nightmare dungeon, by the way. It doesn't really matter so long as it's in the same tier of the world tier that you're trying to farm. Hopefully that won't take too long. If it takes too long, I'll just cut the video. It's fine. Okay, this is the last one. All right, so now we're at a point where we're gonna transition into the second part of the dungeon. So here's where it gets interesting. Essentially, what I'm gonna do here is I'm only gonna go out the door. I'll do that little segment where it like transitions me to the second phase. Which in this case, it's just a boss fight. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just gonna teleport out. Doesn't matter. Okay. So once you're out, this is the part where you're now in the state where it's bugged. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna farm the dungeon that I currently prefer. A lot of you have heard about it. It's the ruins of Erudu, but it really can be any dungeon. It's just that right now it seems to be the one that is the most efficient in terms of XP per hour type of thing. So yeah, so just to quickly kind of showcase, I'll head there and then I'll start my timer just to show how long it takes to complete. I do have a semi-optimized setup. It's not perfect. I still have some pretty low gear. Like I have a temerity 683. It's pretty low. I have some okay gear, but not the best. So I'll head in there. I'll do the dungeon. And for this part, because you're in a state where dungeon is always going to reset where you're going to leave, I actually only do the first part of that dungeon as well. If you want, you can complete it. It's just that for me, I find it just faster. So I'll start the timer here. Then I'm kind of just going to go through it as quickly as I can. Sorry. So yeah. Let's see. I don't know how long it's going to take, to be honest. I always assumed it would take like maybe a minute or two, but we shall see with the timer. And to be honest, you don't have to slay all the enemies. I do so because a lot of times in that dungeon, well, any slay all actually, there's going to be times where you're going to have a horde of enemies. And that also spawns a few elites every now and then. So it's a decent chunk of XP and potential loot. So that's why I tend to just try to actually do the kill all as much as possible. Sometimes I do have a few stragglers and then I kind of just leave the dungeon. It doesn't matter. You don't need to complete the whole thing. Now that the setup is technically done, you'll see what I mean by instant resets. It's very interesting. So let me just kill these guys. Oh, a new horde. See what I mean? A new horde. It's always good. Okay, so now we're at a point where this is where it's cool. I don't need to leave the game. Just gonna teleport back to town. As you can see, it took me like what, a minute 30 to complete this. It's pretty fast. Okay, like it's really quick. So now that I did this, I teleported back to town. If I want, I can go to the shops and sell my stuff, or you know, do whatever. And then you just want to go back into your proto. Now this is where the magic happens. So as you can see, I'm at the entrance. I open the map. It's unexplored. I'm just gonna quickly walk in, and you'll see I now have enemies, right? So this, from here on out, every time I'm gonna leave the dungeon, they are just going to reset. That's just, it's as simple as that. So now, if I take, for example, I have 1.1 mil XP. Okay, I'm actually gonna do the math here because why not? 1.1. I'll keep it in mind. I'll do this dungeon again, just to kind of quickly showcase why I'm running this specific dungeon, even though it's not, you know, you could do this on any dungeon. The setup doesn't really matter. And I'm kind of hopeful that Blizzard won't nerf this, but let's be real, it's clearly some weird exploit, so I'm assuming it's gonna get nerfed. But I really wanted to showcase this simply because I'm at a point where I'm almost 100. So by the time Blizzard actually tries to do something on this, I'm already going to be 100, so it won't matter to me anymore. I'm quickly going through this. I was at 1.1 mil XP, don't forget. I'll try to not forget myself. Kind of running along. Okay, I didn't full clear. There's a lot of stragglers, but as you can see, I'm at 1.4, so we're talking what, 300,000 XP. Let's say 350 if I really want to push it. See kind of how much here I can get through. Oh, with a new horde, that's actually going to bump up the number quite a bit. Okay, so 1 enemy left there. So 1.5. So we're talking 400k XP in how much? It took a minute 30. So we're talking 400,000 XP on average in less than 2 minutes. I think that's a lot. Like, if I'm being honest, it's a lot of XP. You also get some loot. Like, as you can see here, there's legendary, there's ancestral gear, sacred stuff. Sometimes you'll have a run where you have 10, even a dozen of legendaries, even uniques. Sometimes there won't be anything. Doesn't matter. I'm at a point where I'm not really trying to loot. I'm just pushing for that level 100 right now. But yeah. So that's pretty much it. Now, one thing I do want to mention that's very important for this is that there will be some times where you're gonna teleport out, and when you go back in, it won't reset. Like, that actually happens every now and then. It's rare, but it can happen. Whenever that happens, the only thing you have to do is you open your map and you go back to the nightmare dungeon. That should still be up, right? As long as you don't leave the game, of course. But the nightmare dungeon should still be up, and then you'll notice that that dungeon has reset. So what you do is you essentially just redo the first half of it, and then you'll be once again in the state where you can go back to any dungeon and then clear it if you want, or just do half of it, then leave and go back, and it'll reset every time. So there you go. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this was pretty clear, but I mean, I may have missed a little few steps or details. Again, it can be any nightmare dungeon, and once the setup is done, it can be any dungeon. Doesn't really matter. Hopefully that helps. If there's anything, let me know in the comments. And here you go. Have a good one, everybody. Pure out.